We can't say, well, the machine did that. Well, let's understand what we mean by AI.
Maybe a United Nations kind of coordination between countries.
Well, what if AI is the analyst?
No. We are completely in line, Tony. I'll give you an example.
In today's episode, we sit down with Tony Moroney from Dublin, globally recognized AI strategist and a top LinkedIn voice, to explore one of the most urgent questions of 2025. Do we need a universal AI rulebook before innovation outspaces regulation? And how does it impact our corporate workplaces? Tony brings a rare clarity to the intersection of AI, digital governance, and enterprise transformation. His experience is drawn from decades of advising global boards and shaping digital strategy across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. Also joining me is my co-host, Mr. Akshay Raj, CEO of Uno Labs. Welcome to Data and AI Exchange.
Welcome, Tony.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Thank you, Tony. So, Tony, I'll start it right away. See, we are talking about the global rulebook for AI before it's too late, right? So, as Gen AI moves deeper into enterprise workflows, what are the foundational elements you believe a global AI governance framework must include? Beyond the obvious data privacy.
Yeah, well, look, I think, and look, you mentioned it in the intro that, look, this is moving very fast. And in many respects, we are moving into the unknown. Look, the AI is not new, but the speed of what's happening and where it's bringing us is actually quite challenging for a lot of organizations. And I would say, look, the first thing we need to do is we need to work on a principles base. So we can't expect to have rules for things we don't understand, but we can actually set principles in terms of how we want to work, how we want to do things, and how we expect outcomes to manifest for all of our customers or all of our stakeholders. So we need to be clear in terms of what is our guiding principle in terms of what we're trying to do with AI. I think there's a huge gap in terms of AI literacy, because if we don't understand AI at its base level, how can we actually govern it? And I think that is a real challenge for organizations, because as I see it, there's a low level of AI literacy, and incredibly, there's probably even a lower level of ethical policies in place for the responsible use of AI. So I think there's a big gap there in terms of let's get the principles, let's get the literacy right, and then let's start to understand, well, what is the interplay between humans and AI in the world as we go forward, because it's going to be different. Because one of the big things that we have to recognize is that AI is not passive. In the past, you could put in technologies and it was passive. It would wait for you to instruct it to do something. But in this world, AI actually might start doing things itself. So particularly in the agentic world, where actually it starts to take decisions, or it starts to predict and make outcomes based on whatever is in front of it. So there's a real challenge here for organizations, because if we think of how our organizations run today, in the main, they are command and control structures, where the people at the top, think they have the most information. But actually, in this world we're moving into, you now have a situation where we will have human and digital agents, and the digital agents may know more than the human agents. And how do we govern for that? And how do we actually even understand what's happening? Because part of the challenge is, we may not have visibility or a comprehension in terms of what actually is happening in the business. So I think, look, we need to go back to first principles. What are the guiding principles and values that run our organization? What are the the minimum standards we need to have in terms of education, in terms of understanding what it is we're actually dealing with, and then understanding actually that the world is changing and the enterprise is changing, and how we lead our organizations is changing, and therefore how we govern them has to change too.
Okay, that's a good point, Tony. So do you think, when you say literacy about AI, so do you think this should be organization level training material, or kind of, which has to be trained, all the employees have to be trained on this, all the leadership has to be trained on this, and this will take quite a lot of time. Do you vision it like this?
So I think look, we don't want to run the risk of the traditional sheep dip. So yeah, we put everyone on an AI training program. It was 30 minutes long or an hour long, whatever.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Everyone knows about AI. Well, yeah, maybe. I think the reality is, look, most people can spell AI, so that's a good starting point. We know that people are using all these AI tools outside of work, and actually, quite often they're using them inside of work, but their employers may not even know they're doing that. I think what's missing is we need to create an understanding of what is the potential of AI as a business tool or as an enterprise transformation tool, and to start to understand that actually it demands of us that we understand how it manifests in terms of outcomes and what is a good and responsible way to use this in the business. Because look, I guarantee you, we are going to see court cases in the future where organizations will be saying, well, we didn't realize the technology did that. Now, that's not an excuse. You can't do that, right? So I think it's more than understanding what it is. It's understanding that actually there is ethics behind it. There's a responsible use of it, and there is an onus on us to make sure that the outcomes are, they're good outcomes, that we can stand over them, that we're not embarrassed by the outcomes. Because what we have to recognize is, look, if you're in an organization and you have a rogue employee, maybe they'll impact 50, 60 customers before you have found out. If you're in an organization and you have rogue AI, you may not know it has impacted all of your customers, and you may not find out for 6, 9, 10 months, but by then all the damage is done. So I think we need to be very careful here. And I'm all pro AI. We should absolutely be using it, and we should be transforming our businesses, and we should be taking all the mundane work out and helping our people, augmenting our people so they can add even greater value and have more job satisfaction. But let's understand what we mean by AI and how we want to make sure that people have a understanding in a way that they can use it that's ethical and responsible and it's outcome driven.
That's very interesting, Tony, that you said that. In our last podcast, we had ex-CTO from HSBC, and he said the same thing. Basically, he said that everybody is coding, everybody is doing vibe coding, but there is little accountability as of now in organizations. So my question to you, Tony, is that, agentic AI is the next level of AI, and everybody is now using it from code generation to even decision making. How can an enterprise ensure explainability and traceability in such systems?
Well, it is a great question, because look, if we think about, in the past, we might have written the program and then we can audit the program. We can understand, oh yeah, it was supposed to do A, did it do A? Well, what actually, if in our agentic world, actually the machine starts, well, actually A is not the right answer, B is a better answer. Right? Do we actually even understand that is happening? Right? Have we got visibility, or actually do we have the wherewithal to actually even identify it? Right? So I think the thing here is that, we need to rethink how enterprises work. Right? Because if we just overlay, particularly tools like agentic AI onto our, traditional business model, there's going to be a disconnect, and we're not going to be on top of it. So we need to rethink, okay, what is the role of the enterprise? How is AI going to actually support the enterprise in terms of what we're trying to do? What does that mean in terms of, what humans do, what AI does? Where is the human in the loop to make sure that, what we think AI is doing is what it is actually doing, right? And where are the controls and the governance around that? So I think we have a bit of a journey to go, and I think a lot of it needs to start with the board and the executive realizing that this is not a technology overlay. This is a fundamental transformation of their enterprise, where AI will be at the center. Because look, if we think about it, I did an article there earlier in the week, and it was around, well, it was in financial services, but essentially the article was, well, what if AI is the analyst? So in the past, we had all these experts who, were, their macros and spreadsheets and this, that, and the other, and they were applying human judgment. Well, what actually if AI is just doing all that? Where does that leave us?
Yep. True question. Go ahead, Akshay.
Yeah. So, Tony rightly said, even, few months before, right, I also went through one of the, news article, right, where, in a quote, the lawyer went through the complete, argument written by the chat GPT, right? And the moment the honorable judge, right, look after those arguments, the complete, things goes wrong, and ultimately it has been banned. So what happened exactly? What happened was, we should take the help of these AI tools, these chatbots, but at the same time, as we in the past, previous podcast as well, we spoke about that, complete dependency of of these tools, right, is not right. Before giving the final impression, definitely we should do some research, we should look after those those results, and then definitely there is a human intervene, and it has to be drafted like that way itself. Having said that, coming back to the topic, Tony, thanks a lot for explaining about agentic AIs and all. So I just want to ask you, from an employee standpoint, right, if the outcome, business outcome, is influenced by the AI agents' decisions, then what would be the implications for human accountability and role definition? I'm just talking about from business point of view.
I think, look, there's a rule of thumb that if AI can do more than 50% of your job, you need a new job. If it can do less than 50%, you need to redefine your job. So I think the first thing we need to do is we need to redefine our jobs, because the job definitions we have today are not fit for purpose. And that's because all of this AI is now capable of transforming not just the organization, but every single role. So we need to redefine the role. We also need to redefine, well, what are our responsibilities? And look, I'm very, you'll hear me say this several times. We can't say, well, the machine did that. That's the machines. The machines ultimately are there for our benefit. They are, business tools. We can't sort of say, well, the machine made the machine decided to do that, so how would I know better? No, we're the humans. We decide. Yes, so I think there is a real challenge, and I think there's a real challenge for management, because what if in your team you have 6 employees and 3 AI agents, and so you now have 9 employees, but 3 of those employees are digital and they work 24/7, 365 days a year, and they can synthesize things at a speed that humans just can't, and they're making decisions, and it's impacting on the others, and the others may not even know what's happening. We haven't thought this through yet, in my view.
Yeah.
So I think role definition, where the human oversight fits on top of all that, because you can't just delegate to the machines. We need to have a human in the loop that sort of looks at the outcome and sort of says, oh, that doesn't feel right, or based on my experience, I can't see how that could be the answer. Are we managing the intent, or are we just managing the inputs? And I think we need to be managing the intent. What are we actually trying to do for our customers and stakeholders? And then how is AI supporting and enabling that? Not a case of, well, what is AI doing and does that look okay? No, we need to, from the outset, be clear about what we're trying to do.
With your past experience, right? Do you find most enterprises have internal AI audit mechanism in place, or it is being bolted on after development governance? Still being bolted on after development.
So most organizations, I think most organizations, look, the real thing that's going on in organizations is, in my view, there's a lot of be seen to be doing something on AI because we're under pressure from our board or the market to be seen to do something. Right? And that introduces a challenge within the business, because invariably that means it's some AI initiative is happening somewhere in the business, and it's for optics as opposed to substance, and the risk at that is that it's not joined up, and that you find that some pilot was running away over here, and actually no one was really paying attention to it, but it made great headlines when we made our announcements to the press. Oh yeah, we're doing lots on AI. And so I think organizations need to stand back from this. And as I say, look, I'm all for AI, and I think everyone should be using it. but they should be saying to themselves, okay, the world we're in is changing, the speed is accelerating, AI and other technologies, there's a confluence of technologies happening which is going to totally radically transform at a speed we've never seen before. Let's rethink what it means to be relevant and competitive in the future, and let's understand what role AI has within that and how best we're going to harness it in a responsible and ethical way. And I think that would be a great starting point for organizations, as opposed to, well, we better be seen to do something on AI.
Definitely. So, rightly said, Tony. The thing is, right now, each and every use cases, we are just putting, AI everywhere. We are putting AI, right?
And can I just add to that, Ashok, is that look, if we look at some of the, I mean, there's some great things happening too. Like if I take one of the big investment banks, what they have deployed a swarm of AIs. So they call it, and basically they're a swarm of agentic AI. So one AI is doing this, another AI is coming from that direction, another is coming from that direction, another is coming from that direction, another is coming from this. So you have different AIs with different objectives, and they're actually using that. One is essentially checking the other, and it's a bit like they used to say back in the Roman days, who's guarding the guards, right? And we need to be thinking about AI in this context. How are we actually, safeguarding what is happening, and do we actually understand? So it was back to Pratik's question in terms of what is the education that's needed? Well, the education is, foundational, of course, but it's to understand the impact that this can have in the day-to-day business, and then to have the governance wherewithal to understand what actually happens in the business. Because look, the reality is, when we talk about governance, governance is, the board is at 80,000 feet. They're not operating in the business on a day-to-day basis in the main. Right? So, it's grand having, governance up here. But, there was a phrase used by the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK at one stage, and it said, tone at the top, echo at the bottom, and engagement in the middle. And really what they were getting at was, look, just because the board says this, is that what really happens in the organization? Because, if the people at the bottom of the organization, and I don't mean in a derogatory way, but if the people at the lowest end of the organization don't understand it, well, why would they actually have any adherence to it? And then engagement in the middle is, look, your employees don't deal with the board or the executive, they deal with middle management. So if middle management are not engaged on this, well, it's not going to happen anyway. Right? So you need to make sure. So this in a funny way, this actually is about culture, right? Because I come from a perspective that, look, none of this is actually about the technology. This is about, the organization, about, its mindset, its culture. It's around its ability to be competitive, the ability to be relevant in the future, etc. And if we think about this, we sort of say, well, look, as an organization, we want to do well by our customers and employees and other stakeholders. We have a clear vision of where we want to go, and we understand what's happening in the market, or what potential futures could be happening in the marketplace. And we want to take steps to make sure that we are best positioned to succeed in that world. And that means we're clear in terms of how our organization needs to change to get there. And in that context, we understand, well, what exactly AI is supposed to do. And we're able to explain to all of our people why it is important, how to make sure that we're doing it right, how to make sure that, the outcomes are outcomes we can be proud of. And also look, the reality is, for most organizations, I guarantee you, when employees hear the board or the executive making statements about AI, what's going through their mind is, are these guys going to replace me with a robot? Right? So unless we can actually, have our employees embrace this in a way where actually they're not threatened by it, but actually they feel empowered by it, right? They can do better things for their customers. Because look, inherently, most employees want to do well by their customers, right? And if we can show them, actually, this is going to allow you and enable you to do an even better job for your customers, right? Why wouldn't they want it? Because we're going to invest in their skill set. We're going to make them more valuable in their own right. And even if they choose to leave down the road, well, they've gone with a skill set they don't have today, right? But we need to show them that there is a future, there is a path, and they're part of that path, and we're investing in them. So back to Pratik, yes, we need to educate our people. but not just in sheep dip, like, oh yeah, we've given you an hours long presentation on AI, which bored you to death. Actually, no, we've shown you how AI can enhance what you do, how you can get better outcomes from your customer, how you can get rid of all the monotony out of your work, and how you can actually start getting excited about some of the value you can now create. Now, that's the type of world we need to operate in.
So, Tony, I'm just loving the way this conversation is going on, right? Because we started with the leadership, and then now we have come to the grassroots level, the actual employee, the middle management, right? You discussed about how they will be using or threatened by AI. Do you foresee that at employee level, AI usage transparency will become mandatory? For instance, let's say disclosures in AI assistant decisions, like I've written a code through AI. Do I need to be mandated that I inform this to my middle management that I have written this piece of code through AI? Similarly, other activities that I do in an organization, do I need to have inform? Do I need to inform my middle management, my managers that as part of AI usage transparency, this kind of work I have done through AI? Do you think that is coming?
So here's the thing, right? There was a study done in the UK there last year that showed that a lot of employees were paying for generative AI tools themselves on their smartphones without their employer's knowledge, so they could use them at work. Now, that is a really dangerous situation, because if we're going to use these tools, at the end of the day, look, particularly for organizations, if they don't have ethical policies in place, like, it's not. This isn't rocket science. You can't put customer data or proprietary data into a large language model. Period. Right? So, but I think first thing is we need to be growing up about this conversation and recognize that the tools are there and our people are going to use them. So let's empower them to use them in the right way. Right? Because look, if you're saying you can't use AI and someone's dealing with something that they're trying to get their head around, they can work on the bus on the way home, whatever, and figure out, well, actually, that's a great angle for that, right? So I think, look, it's better if it's transparent and that we can be mature about the use of AI in the business. I think in some cases it will be mandatory. So, like under the EU AI Acts, certain things will be classified as high risk, and they will have to be very transparent. But I think, look, as a general principle, we shouldn't have a situation where no one knows who actually did this. Was it the person, or was it an AI? And if it was an AI, on what basis was the prompt written? And if it was an AI, do we know that it's not biased? And look, we had a big court case there a couple of years ago in the States where a big technology company and an investment bank were taken to task for where the technology was reported to be biased towards one gender. Now, I think in an organization, what you need to have is a situation where there's a level of maturity where we're sort of saying, yeah, look, guys, we are using AI. Let's understand the basis on which we will use this. So it has to be responsible, it has to be ethical, we have to have consents, all those type of things. Now, let's understand, how AI is starting to impact on our decisions. So why are we saying that? Is that because that's what we've always done, or is it because AI has actually prompted us to think about something differently? And let's have a conversation about that, and let's understand, well, actually, is that a good outcome, or actually is that consistent with the values of the organization? Because look, AI is not human. Let's not forget that. So AI might come up with something that is totally logical, but actually it's totally in variance to the values of the organization.
Thanks, Tony.
Good.
Thanks. Tony, we decentralized model deployments, right, across clouds, departments, and geographies. What do you think? Is the global rule harmonization even technically feasible, or we are heading for fragmentation?
So here's the thing. Look, AI is now being recognized as a general purpose technology. So just like electricity. The difference, though, this time around is, as I said earlier, AI is not passive, whereas electricity is passive. So there is let's just call it a global AI race emerging, and this is being driven by a range of things. So you got digital sovereignty, right? So recognition that if you're just an end user of AI, actually you don't have any control of the competitive advantage. In fact, I did an article there recently, which was, well, whose business is becoming more clever? Is it yours, or is it the platform that actually is providing the agentic AI? Right. So all countries are looking at this and sort of saying, well, actually, we need to make sure that we are sovereign in terms of AI. So of course we have the US, China up in headlights, but Europe is pushing ahead with its AI. The UK is pushing ahead with its AI. India is pushing ahead with its AI. The Gulf region is pushing ahead with its AI. So there's a thing around sovereignty. You don't want to be at the beck and call of someone else on something so important. But there's also another thing, which is around cultural fit. So what's right in Silicon Valley may not be right for the rest of the world. Right? So in your country, there is a cultural fit in terms of what you want these large language models and all these AI tools to be able to do that are consistent with the culture and heritage, etc. Right? Europe's culture is different than America's. The Gulf region is different again, and so on and so forth. So I think you got a sovereign issue, which is all around competitive advantage. You got a cultural issue, which is around, but what's right for our culture? Right? Because we're not all the same. Let's be honest, we're not all the same. We have different cultures, different value systems, all those type of things. And I think when you boil all that down, you kind of end up with we might have some standards, but actually in the main, we are in a fragmented geopolitical world of digital technologies now. And it's a race to see who can actually get dominance. But I don't think that dominance is going to happen, because I think too many parts of the world have recognized that actually they need their own digital sovereignty. So I think it's going to be around how do we make sure that how do parts of the world make sure that they have AI systems that are coherent and consistent with their values, that don't leave them exposed to someone pulling the plug. Right? And I say that tongue in cheek, but what if someone decided to cut off a country because they didn't like what they're doing? Right? So I think when you think about this, it's quite serious. Then the other thing is, look, AI is absolutely no value unless you got great data. So a reason why you want sovereignty is you want to protect your data, because if you lose your data, actually you don't have anything. Right? So you want to make sure that your data is protected, and therefore you're going to want sovereign systems that make sure your data does not leave your jurisdiction and does not have access from other jurisdictions. So I don't see it being a global solution. In an ideal world, you'd say, look, we'd all agree and we'd all get on and we'd all be great friends and we'd all agree great standards and it'll all be interoperable and it'll be wonderful. But that's not the reality of the world we live in. And I think what you're going to see is big trading blocks. So the EU, the US, India, Middle East, whatnot, China, and you're going to see big parts of the world where actually they will have a standard that works for them, and they will invest in that and they will protect that. But will it just be one? I don't think so. No.
Yeah, absolutely right.
You might disagree with me.
No. We are completely in line, Tony. I'll give you an example. Right? See, very rightly said, AI can't do alone anything. Definitely, AI is dependent upon the maturity of the data. Right? I'll give you an example at Uno Labs. Right? When we started, and we talk about because Uno Labs, we are a data and AI consulting firm. When we talk about on data consulting, people were very reluctant, because it touches their heart when we say the data is crap. We need to work on the cleansing part. There's still lots of work need to be done. People don't want to listen all those things, right? The moment we turn the we just flip the coin. We just we started going towards the AI implementation and all. Once and that different once see AI is a buzzword, right? When you go to the customer talking about AI, everyone listen to you, everyone talks, wants to implement those kind of definitely technologies and all. And when we get into all those, into AI consulting, then we make them understand the exact reality about the data what they were having in place. And the whole scope got changed from AI implementation, right, to the, starting from the data cleansing. So this is the real fact.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think look, most organizations totally underestimate the importance of data and data infrastructure, and they're looking at AI as some sort of silver bullet. But actually, it's like buying a train, but actually having no train tracks. Right? So you need to make sure that your data is good, that it's robust, that it is free from bias, all those type of things. You need to have the ability to access your data, so your data infrastructure becomes really important. It needs to be accessible to all the parts of the organization, and the risk as I see it is organizations will say, oh look, AI is over there, and they're forgetting that actually but AI is kind of like the icing on the cake, but the cake actually hasn't been well made. And the reality is, organizations talk about being customer centric, but they're not really that customer centric, because in most cases their data is terrible. And if your data is terrible, it's hard to be customer centric, because actually you don't know what your customers are actually doing. So I would say, to your point, look, a really important thing for organizations to get their mind around is that, look, we can use AI, and AI could be very beneficial in terms of accelerating our transformation and making sure we're relevant and competitive. But there are some fundamental things we need to do, apart from, Pratik, getting the AI literacy in place. We also need to get our data sorted. We need to get our data infrastructure sorted. We need to make sure that, we got, interoperable standards in everything that we're doing.
I think the kind of governance model that you're talking about, what I understand it from what you said, is that it requires a lot of maybe a United Nations kind of coordination between countries, isn't it? And that's what I understood from what you said. And if I may ask you, because you're a known personality in AI, right? And if you were helping draft a G20 or a United Nations level AI policy, what would be the top 3 clauses specifically for enterprise AI usage?
Well, look, they probably would ask me. I'm flattered that you think they might. But anyway, no. If I was talking to them, I'd say, look, explainable and ethical AI by design. Right. So there's no point in dealing with this as an afterthought. You need to get it right up front. So, and if you don't design it in, it's a bit like in the old days. Well, let's go to market. We'll fix the back office later. That never happened, and it usually ended up in disaster at some point in time in the future. Right. I think human oversight. We have to make sure that humans are in the loop. Right. We can't just think that we can delegate our responsibilities to AI. Human oversight. Humans have to be in the loop. And then I think that there needs to be, ongoing, AI risk assessment. I mean, look, actually, does an organization do most organizations even have an AI risk register? Good question. I'm not sure they do. Right. So I think we need to learn, because we are in a space of iteration, and we're going to learn by making mistakes. And hopefully we make small mistakes so that we can correct them quickly and sort of say, okay, that was an interesting learning. But wouldn't it be better if we could share those mistakes in a mature way, where sort of say, well, actually, yeah, we bumped into this, and oh, that's interesting. Well, we hadn't thought about that. So I think we need to be thinking about that. But I think, look, the one thing you have to remember is, if you think of, when we talk about governance, you're talking about, at the top echelons of an organization. So board risk committee, whatever, or, executives. Most of those people, when they left college, the internet didn't exist, neither did a smartphone. We're now in a world where, while AI is older than me, and I wasn't born yesterday, actually it's only become a household name in the last 3 years. So we're asking, people to govern something that is, just totally out of their comfort zone, and, in many cases outside of their understanding. So I think organizations have a big challenge. And it's back to, I suppose, the first question. I think it's a lot of this is around your principles. What are the principles in which you want to do things? Right. So that's back to culture. It's back to values. It's about, how you want to do things. And AI is not going to do that for you, by the way. Although I was in a meeting with a conglomerate company operating across Europe, and I said, "Have you got a AI ethics policy?" And no. And then a few minutes later, a guy said, "Actually, we have one now." And the group CEO said, "Where did that come from?" He said, "I just got it from ChatGPT." So, but I think it's better if we're intentional about this, not leaving things to chance.
Great insights, Tony. I think we had a great conversation today. You mentioned about transparency in AI, the very responsible and ethical use of AI. You have actually suggested that employees should critically challenge it and do not blindly believe on the outcomes. And most importantly, humans should be in the loop. I think that makes a very strong pitch for a responsible AI throughout the world, throughout the organization. So I think it was a great conversation to me. Thanks a lot.
No, I enjoyed it. It was great meeting you two, and lovely conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks a lot, for your valuable time. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.